Hey everybody, Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor of chatting with upright and electric jazz bassist, composer, band leader, arranger, y para mi gente hispanoparlante, un bajista extraordinario, Mauricio Morales. Yay!
It's a
So,
pleasure to be here with you, Raul.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. So, Mauricio, there's a lot of exciting things going on. You have a new album release, but as always, we like to go to the past. How did you get started in music and particularly on bass?
Well, I feel like my particular story seems to be, very similar to the one from a lot of people from my generation. I grew up listening to a lot of music. There's not a single musician in my family. I am the first one. However, my mom is a watercolor painter. She's an artist. So I think that having someone's passion for art so close to me throughout my childhood is obviously very impactful. But also, my father well, he still loves music very much. And one of the ways we bonded growing up was him sharing his favorite records with me, we going to concerts together. And I guess that my relationship with music started because of my relationship with my dad. It was definitely something very powerful, and I was very curious about listening and discovering to new music. I started playing bass not necessarily because I was at the time passionate about the instrument itself. To be completely honest with you, when I was 13, 14 years old, I didn't even really know what the bass did. It's like in my head, there was guitar and there was a band frontman, and the truth is that 14 years old is not exactly young, considering that a lot of people start playing instruments a little earlier, you
Mhm.
know? So it took me a while to convince my parents to get an instrument for me, because at the time they were like, well, the thing is that I mean, this is a big expense, and like we're probably gonna enjoy it for a week and then leave it, But like after me pestering them with the idea of getting an instrument for as long as I did, they were like, all right, let's give this a shot. And when I finally convinced them, it just turns out that there were a good amount of guitar players in my school,
Mhm.
my which is not an art school by any means, It was just kids that were playing guitars. And the truth is that at the time, it didn't matter to me what instrument I was playing. What I knew is that I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to play with people. To me, I guess that in a way, the most beautiful thing about music is human connection. And at this moment, like the idea of sharing a common goal with a group of people seemed to be what attracted to me the most about music, beyond the idea of chops, beyond the idea of being the focus of attention or anything like that. I just wanted to share a common goal with a group of other people. And since my friends already played guitar and drums and so on, I have a very good friend, was still one of my closer friends, like at the time he told me like, since I already play guitar and like we have a few drummers, what don't you play bass? Nobody plays bass around here. And I was like, yeah, sure. It's like I didn't even understand what that meant. I didn't understand, you know, much about the instrument itself,
Mhm.
even as far as its role in the band. But as soon as I got my first instrument, which was a very, accessible instrument, like a beginner instrument, as soon as I got my hands on that instrument, I knew that I was giving in to what I had chosen. I had chosen the bass, so now it was my responsibility to learn all about the instrument. And it was never about like I said, I don't think it was ego driven. I don't think it was about being the focus of attention or anything like that. But I always had this mentality, even when I first got my first instrument, that I wanted to be the best that I could be, Not even the best in the world or anything like that, because there's not such a thing. And like I think this is something that even my parents kind of taught me early on. Like my mom with the painting, for example, it was not like being the best in the world. It was about being the best she can be, And that was something that really, really kind of stuck with me. And I thought, like, I'm gonna be the best that I can be, whatever this means, you know? And
Hmm.
like I really committed to it. And I started discovering my own music because, of course, as a teen, it reaches a point in which you kind of let go of, you know, your father's music and you start discovering your own, which
Hmm.
in my case was metal. You know, I got into metal, and I still love metal. It's still a huge influence in my music, and I still to this day I listen to Meshuggah all day, every day, you know? And beyond that, like a bunch of other bands,
Hmm.
of course. So it's like I really got into a rabbit hole with that kind of music, you know, had the long hair, had the metal t-shirts, you know, was going to metal concerts, and I was learning all that music, and at the same time, you know, like learning my instrument, learning everything that I could about it. And I guess that the trajectory that I had from a musical standpoint was always wanting more, which from metal went into progressive metal, progressive rock, went into jazz fusion, you know, and went into jazz eventually, you know. It's
Hmm.
like that was kind of the progression because it was the curiosity of okay, there's the idea of playing parts, you know? Okay, I love playing parts. That's great. What's next? You know, it's like, and then little by little, I started kind of leaning more towards the freedom that jazz music had to offer, you know, the idea of like now we are composing on the spot. You have the freedom to be able to play whatever it is that you want, you know, and that is very exciting, but at the same time, it is a big responsibility, you know, because you need to learn how to be very intentional about everything that you play. You want to learn to be able to not play with your hands, but to play with your ears, right? So that's a beautiful thing. And to this day, it is still part of the journey of like trying to become better at that because man, it's like with music or with arts of any sort, you know, you're just a student for life. There's no way
Yeah.
around it.
Well, and with that said, because you were from Mexico City
Yes,
and you ended up pursuing studies at Berkeley.
correct. Yeah, yeah, I did. I did. And it was around that time actually that I started playing upright as well.
Okay.
I started with the upright, I started very late actually. And the reason was very simple, you know, it was around that time that I made it to the college that I wanted to go to.
Hmm.
I knew that I wanted to play jazz, you know, and like I started realizing that there's not very many electric bass players in jazz, you know. So then I thought like I'm still young. I can give this a shot, you know, and see what happens because I wanna play jazz,
Hmm.
you know. And I started playing upright when I went to college, and it was exciting, but at the same time it was interesting because I already had a certain level of musicianship in the bass, not very high. I don't think that when I went to college I was necessarily, you know, a master of my craft by any means. I was learning, you know, but let's say that I already had, you know, some sort of facility on the instrument that suddenly I didn't have on this new instrument. And yet I wanted to play music. And I for some reason started getting myself into a situation where I was playing with people this instrument that I had no idea how to play, you know. And I think that that was absolutely great for me because it kind of pushed me to have to learn kind of fast because it was like, all right, you're already playing, so you gotta play, you
Hmm.
gotta really learn. So I spent a good amount of time with it on it. Of course, being in an environment with musicians from all around the world that all have different cultures and different perception of music and so much to offer, I think just made me grow so much. Whereas when I was in Mexico City, you know, I was a little more sheltered on a musical standpoint in the sense
Absolutely.
that I was playing with my friends, sure, but I was not necessarily part of the scene because there is a scene in Mexico City, but I didn't a jazz one, I mean, or just a musical scene in general. I just
Hmm.
wasn't really part of it. You know, I was kind of more sheltered, practicing at home and things like that, aiming for college and finishing school and this thing. So suddenly being in a place where like music was part of my life every single day and playing with people every single day was just a wonderful experience and very necessary for my growth.
Nice, nice. Well, and with your new album, Between
Mhm.
Dreams and Twilight, tell us a little bit about this project.
This project is a collaboration that I did with my very, very good friend Adam Hirsch. He's a piano player, and he plays in my band here in Los Angeles. We've gone to Mexico, played some music. We've gone to Israel, played some music over there. We're pretty close. We've played together for a few years already, pretty much since I moved to LA, and we have a very good chemistry in and out of the bandstand. We somehow, and when I say somehow, it is truly because I actually don't remember how it happened that we decided we were gonna try to write something together. It is not something that I had ever done. You know, I am very opinionated, and I like to have a lot of control over my writing, so usually I do it all on my own, you know.
Hmm.
This is now my fifth record, and it is the first time that I actually write with someone, you know. So we got together and it happened. It was extremely easy, and it was not even like we were thinking of making a record or anything like that. We just said like, let's try to write something.
Yeah.
It was a very easy process, you know, and I think a very nurturing one as well, because him as a piano player, he has a very particular perception of harmony. You know, he has a very strong sense of harmony that goes beyond what I hear, you know, because just because of the nature of the instrument, I guess, you know, it, and also because of his interest, you know. Whereas me myself, you know, even though of course I have an understanding of harmony and a passion for it as well, I guess my particular interest or strength even leans more on the melodic side. You know, I've focused very much on the idea of developing an extremely strong sense of melody, because that's what I tend to enjoy the most as a listener. I enjoy listening to a beautiful melody. So I think this combination was very interesting because I think it was very nurturing for both of us. And we were both very, it was, there was no ego when we were writing together, you know. It was really like, this sounds great objectively, you know. There's nothing, this is not about me, this is not about you, this is just about like writing a beautiful song, and it came out great, you know, very easily. Actually, the music was written fairly quickly once we committed to the idea of writing the music. And the way we did it was we wrote three songs together, and then he wrote three songs, and then I wrote three songs. We wanted it to be very even, in the sense that both our voices needed to be very, very present throughout the entire record, not only from a performance standpoint, but from a writing standpoint. So yeah, that's how Between Dreams and Twilight happened. And then we thought like, this is music that we're very passionate about. Not that we are not about the previous records or the other records that we're putting together, but the one thing that we thought is like, okay, you know, this is two people instead of one, which means that for an independent project, it's a bit of a wider wallet. We can do things that maybe we wouldn't do on projects that rely solely on ourselves, right? So we had a string quartet. We had like some of our favorite musicians in the world, which we had already been lucky to play with in the past. But like we got them all together to record, and we filmed videos, and we did, you know, everything that we could in order to make this, you know, the best project that we could,
Nice.
you know. And we're very proud of the project. I think it is something that is very authentic, in the sense that the intention of the record the whole time was only to make great music, you know, to make a song that, or songs that were telling a strong story, that had a strong arc. Of course, with instrumental music, this can be very abstract, but you know, even within the titles, you know, I think we can guide the listener in a particular direction, you know, because I think that there is a very specific story that we're trying to tell, and it is, in a way, I think the story of the journey of an artist.
Yeah.
You know, Between Dreams and Twilight, I think it is about us following our dreams, being inspired by our dreams, but at the same time being constantly chased by a certain darkness that can crush us at any given time for whatever reasons, be these financial reasons, be these emotional reasons, personal reasons, whatever. Being a musician is not easy nowadays, you know, especially not one that plays music that's so niche.
Yes.
you know. So I think that's why it is between Dreams and Twilight, and I think that we are exploring a few different angles from this particular phase in our lives, because you know I guess it was kind of impossible to kind of share this specific moment in our lives in our writing.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
that's
Very
that's the
nice.
record.
Very cool. Well, and of course, it is always one of the challenges, I think, especially with jazz, because it has been evolving
Yeah.
and it's in a perpetual state of change. And so when you talk about when there's like some of the classics like Monk and Coltrane and all that, it had certainly a more danceable, wider appeal to the audience. And I think unfortunately it kind of narrowed down to people that were more purist. It became more kind of eclectic that only certain people could listen to it. But listening to this, I found it to be more, I think, universal, which is very
Mhm.
nice because I think, unfortunately, sometimes jazz, more fusion, can turn into something that doesn't the normal listener can't relate to. The musician can, because you go technically, you're going, oh my gosh, look at what they're doing. But
Mhm.
the general musician's like, the general person like, I don't know, I don't. There's
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of notes, and so this had much more of the storytelling and the melody. Now, with that said, pretty much everything I heard was upright in this
Mhm.
recording. Okay.
Yeah, everything in that recording was the reason was for orchestration purposes. You know, I mean, when we were writing this, we had vibraphone, we had because we actually wrote the music with these musicians in mind, you know, so we knew it was going to be vibraphone, it was going to be guitar, drums, and a string quartet, you know, so because of the way that we were writing and because of the way we were orchestrating the music, it just made sense to keep things acoustic, you know. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that in general, the upright bass was what both our ears were leaning more towards. It felt right, which is interesting because now that I think about it, I realize that most of the music that I have recorded under my name have a upright bass, more so than electric bass, which is I don't know if that's necessarily the greatest representation of my musicianship because I play electric bass as much as I play upright bass for sure, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and not only that, I love electric bass far more than well, no, not far more. That's that's not true. Just as much as I love upright bass, but the record that I am doing this year is going to be all electric.
Gotcha.
I am committing to also you know, recording more music on electric because I need to.
There you go. Well, you don't want your basses feeling left out, or
Yeah.
it has to be like children. You can't say this is my favorite, this one isn't. But how are you getting your sound? What are you playing on?
For the upright bass, I have a lemur bass. It is a bass from a company in California. I'm not entirely sure if the bass itself is built in California or built somewhere else, but the bass is a great bass. It is fully carved. I am using spiral core strings. It's interesting. I've tried plenty of strings. I've tried gut strings. I've tried hybrid string. I've tried like bigger strings. I've had all kinds of strings on the upright, and I just came back to the strings I started with, which are the spiral core Vikes, which are you know I feel like they have a very nice bounce. They have wonderful intonation. They are very easy to play, and as far as the upright goes, I guess that's uh that's it. There's no much to it. It's just great wood. It's a
Yeah.
great. It's a wonderful bass, and I haven't changed the strings in I think like 4 years now. There's not much more to that one. As
Gotcha.
far as the electric goes, I have a few basses, but the bass that I play the most by far, I have a Fodera. It is a custom Fodera. It is a Monarch model. And essentially, what this bass is trying to do is trying to be the best possible representation of the jazz bass in my as far as my particular taste. For example, the wood is alder, just like the basses from the 60s and 70s.
Hmm.
It has a Brazilian rosewood on the neck, you know, so it's same. I'm basically trying to make Jacko's bass, but
Yeah.
on a five string. You know, it's like that's To me, the sound that I've always leaned more towards, the one that has always resonated with me the most, has been the sound of the jazz bass, and most specifically the jazz bass from the 60s.
Nice. Now, did you get Mike Pope electronics on yours?
But, well, the thing is that Fodera has had the Mike Pope electronics for quite a while now. This bass was made in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it does have the Mike Pope Fodera preamp. This is pre-Trickfish.
Yes.
So yeah,
Nice.
yeah, I have that. I have single coil pickups, and to be honest with you, I don't really use the preamp. I play it passive the whole time because to me that's the sound of the jazz bass. I like to have it passive. I like to get just the most transparent sound of this particular bass because it just sounds very much like a jazz bass. It plays like butter. It's the best bass I've ever played in my life.
Very cool. Well, and with that said, all of this fun stuff, what plans do you have for the future? You're going to be touring, working the record? What's in the works?
Yeah, right now we are putting together a schedule. Ideally, we will be able to bring the music out at least in the United States this coming year. I am also going to make an effort to maybe bring it to South America or Europe if we find the opportunity. But that's the plan, to play the music out there as much as we can and also record more music.
Nice. And if people want to know where's the best place to look for them to find out what you're doing and where you're going to be?
Well, I am on all the social platforms. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. But honestly, the one that I am the most present at, as any other millennial, I guess, is Instagram right now. I think that's where I will most likely respond the fastest if they have any inquiry of any sort, and probably the one that I also use as a consumer, let's say. But I am on all of them, and it
Gotcha.
is at Mauricio Morales Music for all of them.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, Mauricio, we're very excited with the new album. Again, Between Dreams and Twilight. We
Yes.
wish you much success with that and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us. Folks, you've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Mauricio Morales.
Thank you so much, Raul. It was an absolute pleasure.